286 votes is what I reported last Tuesday night. I have every confidence that if we cracked open all of those ballot boxes, that's exactly what we'd find in there. And I know that sounds sexy to say when we just say, hey, we're gonna go recount all these votes. But here's the thing, there's only 2 people in this county that can order me to do that, and those are the 2 district court judges. You don't have the authority to do that, and I certainly don't have the authority to do that. So that's number 1. The other piece to that is there would have to be a strong precedent or something just glaring that would make us go down that road, and I don't know that either one of those 2 gentlemen could be convinced by anybody that were there. I understand the concerns from people at Liberty Hall on Saturdays when we're not seeing a name and we know we voted. But if we don't start that day with an erroneous list, then we're not standing here right now. Between Adrian and Sharon yesterday, and I took many calls, and many of those people are in this room right now, including all of y'all. Every name that was sent to me was verified, not only with a date time stamp of where you were, but with a digital signature. And I think I sent Sharon her son's. So again, I understand that there is a sensitivity surrounding elections, and rightly so. We don't ever want to preside over an election where we feel like the results weren't right, or they weren't accurate, or something nefarious was going on. So again, when I, and a couple of the people kind of touched on the process, the area that I have a concern with right now as I stand before you, and you guys know that I've always been all about transparency, and numbers are numbers and they better be right, or we got to figure out why they're not. And we're still doing that because we've got a challenge with the new poll books that we deployed this election, and this was the largest election where we had every location open, and well, I take that back. November we did it, but we didn't have any problems. What we found this past election is that connectivity, internet connectivity, is a challenge. I spent a couple of hours out at Ernest Epps on election day because for whatever reason, same with Roy City Hall, there's a connectivity challenge with that building, that structure. Yeah, I see.
Those aren't the only issue we're dealing with.
Checking the neat thing. Buy low, sell high. So if the poll book is not connected, Janet shows up to vote at 7 o'clock in the morning on March 1st. If we're not online, then that information is not transmitted to our parent server in Omaha, and then subsequently pushed back down to my office where I can see you. The information is there, but what we had to do was manually pull it. So the comment that I think it was Chastity made, that we found data, that's not true. We didn't find anything. It was there the entire time. It's just a matter of the things we do on the back end, and not all that magic happens at midnight on Tuesday when I was talking to you on the phone and I was still in the office. So there's a reason why there's a separation between election day and reporting. I know with great certainty that what I reported at approximately 11:30 on March 1st to the Secretary of State, 16-186 between the 2 parties, is absolutely accurate. Where we're struggling right now is because of the connectivity issue. As I go forward to produce the voter list, the numbers are off. And that concerns me because when it comes to voting history, when I go to look at Lee's voter history, it better show me that he voted in the March 22 primary. And if it doesn't, then we've got to figure out where those mistakes were made. And I appreciate everybody, the kind words they had to say about me, and I'll kind of echo that with our workers. The people that volunteer to help me facilitate federal, state, and local elections are 100% quality people. I have got a great mixture from both parties of people that have their own, political ideology, but they're able to keep that out of the polling places. And the folks that have heard me at any of our trainings, know that I always lead with thanking them and then reminding them of their obligation to provide an antiseptic environment for a person to walk in, vote, and leave. So, and I know there's a lot of technical stuff in there, but the last thing I want to touch on is the process. You come in looking for a driver's license or some sort of ID, we swipe you in, it scans, it knows, yep, that's Cliff, he lives in Breezy, he's in precinct 1, whatever.
Let me interrupt you, because this would be one of my questions, and you can answer by the way that you're going down that road. One of the questions that I was going to ask to make sure was to explain, to go through the entire process once a voter enters the room, what their interaction, as well as what equipment they're in that acronym.
Okay, got it. Okay, so voter comes in, we ask for his driver's license. They're at the poll book at this point, that white device that's a Microsoft Office Surface, basically with, on steroids. Scan your driver's license, it knows who you are, where you live, you digitally signed, and then for this election, we finally got it right where we're not asking you that awkward question about which party's ballot you want to see. It was on the screen. Now, because it knows that, it doesn't know that you're Dave Sweden where you live, it knows that you are a voter in precinct X and you asked for a Republican ballot. So when that ballot came out of the printer, that activation card, there's a serial barcode at the top. And then when you transition to the express vote and put that activation card into the express vote, that barcode doesn't know you're Dave Sweet, it just knows you're voter X in precinct Y, and then it's showing you the ballot that you asked for. So, you're voting on the touch screen, you picked all your people, and then you said print card. And then that activation came out, and now at that point, that's a ballot. We take that ballot and we go over to the DS200, which is that large kind of black box looking thing, where you put that ballot in, and you saw the screen that said, thank you for voting. So of the 3 devices that any voter that voted last week, or any vote, or any election for that matter, of the 3 devices that a voter is gonna have interaction with, only one has connectivity, and that's that poll book. That express vote where you put the ballot in to touch screen, no connectivity. The DS200 that essentially counts your vote, no connectivity. Inside the DS200 is the encrypted thumb drive that John alluded to earlier. There is a strict chain of custody, and rightly so, about safeguarding that particular piece of equipment, because it's the one piece of equipment that allows me to tabulate votes as I do that on any election night. When the judges come back to me on election night, there are 2 things that they don't have that are epic fails. That encrypted thumb drive and that ballot box that they have taken out of the DS200, and then they have closed, locked, and sealed and delivered to me, because those ballot boxes don't get opened until the state tells me to do the partial manual recount that we do after every single election. And some of those folks that have participated in that are in this room, and what that looks like is post-election, the state tells me, you will open ballot box X, Y, and Z, and you will report the results from county commission or precinct 2 race, whatever. They specifically identify a couple of different races for us, and then what the folks, that nonpartisan group that participates in that, they count those votes and those ballots, and then they report to me. And if those numbers aren't what I reported on Tuesday, March 1st, then we got work to do. That has never happened since in the 7 years I've been here. So I know that I may seem biased in this equation, and perhaps I am, but I can say from my perspective of watching elections, not only how we do it here in Rockwall, but getting to talk to some of my counterparts in other counties, I feel very comfortable about the way we safeguard information, the layers of cybersecurity and precautionary measures that we take in order to make sure that when a person comes in to vote, after that transaction is over, they feel good about their vote being counted. I could talk all day about this, but I think I'll answer for now, obviously, any questions you got that.
Okay, so, let's see. Got that, no questions.
So, talk about resolution in terms of where we're at now with, so good description there. Let me repeat that for my benefit. Okay, so as a voter, I've gone through it, but I want to make sure that I follow, and then for the public that's in place, that we're all on the same page in terms of understanding, as well as us and those that are listening in. I come into contact with a driver's license, come in and say, I'm here to vote, I'm confirmed, and then I have you utilize that poll book. Then once it's determined that I'm a registered voter and where I'm at, then I'm given that ballot, and I go to the the express vote, and then I insert that, and then I choose specifically which party that I'm gonna participate in, that I'm voting in.
Races, you've already done that part.
Yeah, there we
You
go.
did that at the poll box.
Exactly, I'm sorry, I apologize. That's right, it is, it's done there, and then I go back over, insert that, then I vote, print, I'm able to review my ballot, and then I take it to the DS200, and then I insert it, okay.
That's what you voted.
We're not having issues, but here, follow me right quick, the issues here so your issues are obviously right now, specifically as far as this program is concerned, with that poll book. So,
We are working, when I called our vendor Friday night, and I realized, okay, this isn't right. They have been working since then to reconcile these numbers. And it's not, I have every confidence, we have a great relationship with ES&S, and just to understand, there are essentially only two companies that are certified by the state of Texas to sell any county. Technically, there's three, but the other one is so small. The majority of the counties are in business with ES&S. They provide the equipment that we bought, that this court decided to buy back in 2017. It's the best we could get. You know, the idea of going backwards to a paper ballot system, in my mind, is a terrible idea, and it just doesn't reflect. And when I used to talk to you guys about this years ago, when all things were equal and there were no lines, 70% of the people in Rockwall County wanted to vote electronically. They didn't want to sit down in a booth and fill in ovals and hope that they didn't color outside the line because their vote wasn't going to get counted. So the equipment that we have, I'm very confident that our vendor will continue to work on their end to figure out why I can't account for some voters. I know they voted, because if I got a number in the other standalone system that I didn't talk about, is when those judges come back on election night and deliver to me through my reception and integration team, where we're looking at their tapes, because there's a hard tape that prints out from that DS200 with results on it, and then there's that encrypted thumb drive. And so once that comes to me, I'm sitting at another computer, a standalone computer that is not connected to the internet. And what happens there is essentially, I read in those results to the computer, and then it gives me the results that allows me to come out of that room and go into my office and then upload the results like I was doing, 8 or 9 times that night on last Tuesday. And then the last thing I do at the end of the evening before I go home is I manually input information, numbers, results into the Secretary of State's encrypted website, and that's how the Secretary of State is allowed, that's what makes them have the ability to report results on election night as the evening progresses.
Chris,
Yes.
just a note for the people that are not here, a lot of people may not know this. We paid to have cameras put in that room.
We did.
And you could watch when a person came in, the process that he's talking about, you could watch that process now. Anybody in that room, you can see every move they make. Once they enter that room,
I know people that were watching.
Right. But my point being is that I guess Secretary of State's made us do that. We have another means of watching what goes on for voter fraud. We can see exactly what they do. Because where I was at watching it, somebody said, how are they counting the votes? I said, that little blue bag he gets, if you notice, they put it on the table, then he goes and gets off the table, I said he opens it. And then the next thing you know, he's in front of the computer. I see he's downloading the information from one thing into that computer. So for the people that aren't here or didn't know, very easy to watch you do exactly what you're saying you're doing.
I appreciate you saying that, and it made me forget something I wanted to say. So, all about encouraging civic engagement. I think it's great that people are here and they've got questions. I hope I've answered their questions. But I would tell you the other piece to this, when you talk about cybersecurity and fraud, people always want to default to, you know, stop, steal, fraud, all the stuff that you see on TV on a daily basis, continually. In the 7 years that I've been here and presided over probably close to 30 elections, every election before we deploy equipment for early voting, we're required to conduct a logic and accuracy test, and we publish it. And as I stand here today, and I'll probably change it, I'll probably shoot myself in the foot, it's open to the public. There has not been one person who has ever come and observed that process and said, okay, so talk to me about what you guys are doing. Well, I got essentially a live election right here where I'm doing some live votes. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take those results from that thumb drive, I'm gonna go read them just like I'm gonna do on election night. And I know what the results, you know, are, and the races are real races, you know, it's whatever it was. And then we know what the results are, and when I read them in, if those results aren't right, then we know we got a problem. And then once we zero out all that data, then that equipment is prepared to be deployed when Barry and I take it out on that Friday before early voting starts. So again, all about the civic involvement, engagement, but I would encourage the people here to maybe come observe that process if you really want to kind of understand what it is, how we do, and how we safeguard the integrity of the election.
It's on the,
Can we stay on that?
yes, sir, you sure can. I'm sorry.
So the judge brought up ES&S and that process. And, by the way, Edith, myself, and your predecessor, Glenda, Judith, I'm sorry, not Edith, yeah, I'm Judith. And you're looking very good, ma'am. Yes. We visited ES&S and Tyler, rode together, believe it or not, a Democrat and a Republican, same car, and spent a day together. And that machine was hardly out of prototype prior to your coming on. And we watched that grow, and then I was fortunate to become a commissioner and support that product throughout. What I personally would like to see is a report back from the ES&S as to what happened here. I think I understand it. I think that count via the internet connection. How many of you have a cell phone and you're in a place and you're using Wi-Fi, but suddenly a little window pops up and said, Wi-Fi no longer connected, would you like to use your personal data? I have that happen fairly often, and in my mind, unless you tell me differently, Chris, that's exactly what was happening. And there was no little red light blinking to tell that election worker, hey, you're not connected. And I would like an answer from ES&S as to a resolution to make sure we do not have that in Rockwall County or any county across the state.
And I should have probably led with right now. I know they're listening because I spoke to our customer service rep last night and asked her as well as Chris Moody, who was the guy, y'all probably don't remember, but came in and kind of, you know, we had two people come in and kind of pitch new equipment to us back in 17, and he was the one that came in. So they are acutely aware of my concerns. They understand that I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna do this after every election where we're doing this magical mystery about a name not being on a list. We're just not gonna go that route. So, they understand the seriousness of what we're talking about here today. And they understand, as I made it clear to them, that it would not be out of this court's purview or prerogative to say, you know, maybe we don't have the right girlfriend. And I get that. I believe we do, because again, we've got a great relationship with these folks. We spent money. The feedback I get from people who come to vote are like, that was awesome. That was easy. Much easier than it's ever been. But we have to account, you know, votes are votes and names are names. And we gotta be able to be accountable.
A couple more questions, and glad to hear, and that doesn't surprise me that they would be watching or listening, so you can answer this, or this would be a question that I'm gonna wanna talk to me about when we use the terminology. I understand, as you just mentioned, and what was referenced a moment ago here in terms of Wi-Fi, but when people have generically used the term, or specifically use that term, the poll book goes down.
Okay.
What does that mean, and what happens when they say, and then I have to go back, turn the poll book back on?
No, I mean,
code that they turn it on.
If it's defective, it's defective. And then like there were a couple, I swapped out a couple of poll books. And again, it's new technology, so we're still kind of kicking the tires on it. But there were a couple of poll books that we had issues with on election day that we swap out. It's a matter of me just reprogramming another poll book and taking it out to the location. When it's not connected to the internet, it has no way to report to Omaha that you were somewhere on election day at a certain time and asked for a specific ballot style. And if I don't get that poll book, if I don't recover that data, or for whatever reason we can't recover it, and when I say we, it's not a function of my department. This is, and again, that great relationship with ES&S, they're working to solve this, but I believe we have done collectively in my department all we can do at this point. So they've got some, and obviously we will support them in whatever they need, but the ball is kind of in their court, is trying to help us figure out why don't my numbers match.
Right, so in addition to, again, going with the idea that maybe you can address this now,
Okay.
but otherwise it can be relayed to them, either if it hasn't already by you, or if they are listening and watching. Why does it show up, the issue that touched on earlier, in addition to folks not showing up on that, why does it show up different times? I mean, that was an issue when running me through what was released, or what information they had the other day that's showing that I voted it.
No, you and I talked yesterday.
I know, but I want to touch on on the information of what was
It's
there.
the
Because on that one, hang on a minute, let's make it clear for everybody else in here to understand what it was. That on that first report showed me at Heath on a different date at a different time than what you had.
Right.
You ended up having once you confirmed that.
Yeah, I had you at the library on the first day of early voting.
1:30.
Okay. So yeah, the date timestamp issue to me is directly related to the connectivity issue. And for
It's
whatever.
in there somewhere though.
Yeah, it's in there in that poll book somewhere, and as we manually recovered data and pushed it up to the server, for whatever reason, that it was pushing people to, hey, I know you voted on February 14th at 1:30, but because I manually recovered your data and your digital signature out of the poll book, it slapped it in there at 7:01 on March 1st. Don't know why, again, those are the two things that they are working on to, I don't know if resolve is the word, but they damn sure at least gotta give some sort of plausible explanation for us, in my mind.
Commissioners, thank you, sir. Rockwall, the Rockwall County Library, sir. Yep, which one?
So Chris,
It shows, and that was how many.
Now,
Remember,
so Judge Sweet's talking, you're talking about the roster that they were circulating Saturday at the convention.
They're looking at, yeah, when she pulls it back up, it showed everybody as, I think it showed Adrian as.
I wasn't existing,
Yep.
so.
Not you, and it showed him voting.
So the names that were spoken about today that were left off,
I was arguing all day, but mine was.
Every single one of them. Every single name between Sharon and Adrian yesterday, they're sitting right there. I got a date, time stamp, and a digital signature. So again, a lot of this, I'm not saying that we don't have challenge with the poll book, but a lot of why we're here right now is because of what happened Saturday with the
So your count now is the same, 16,186 with the poll books in this?
16,186 is never, well, that's gonna go up slightly based on the ballot board.
Oh.
Ballot board, there, we had the Democrats and the Republicans yesterday in my office. They got a little bit more work to do, and then those numbers will drift to the north a little bit. The number that I show when I produce, as of right now, as we stand here, hey, give me, just like you've done before, hey, give me the list of registered voters for precinct 1 through 1F. Those numbers, in my mind, are not gonna jive with what they should as far as a person in one of those precincts that actually voted during, and that's where we're still working to reconcile names to numbers.
So that sign-in book that you talk about when we first go in,
Yep.
that stores data then.
Does it?
So that's how you're able to magically, when it goes back online or wherever it does, magically pull that up and has the exact information it needs.
So, it's supposed to do it like that, as soon as that thing comes online, and we were doing that election night, because we knew we had challenges with connectivity with specific poll books. When that didn't work, that's when I was literally back there in the warehouse, between Friday and, Monday and yesterday, with a thumb drive, pulling data. Again, so we didn't find any data, we just weren't looking in the right place. And again, the vendor is, because it's new equipment, and, that is what it is. Our vendor has worked real close with us, to help us make sure we get what we get. It won't surprise me if someone from ES&S is in my office either tomorrow or Friday to really kind of help us dig in. And I would expect that they want to get there. It is very much in their interest to get this right. As much as I want it to be right, they got a dog in that fight too, for obvious reasons.
He got killed on his own finally. That won't go off. Everybody that's here, is seeking, a good, understanding of how the process works and the equipment that's used. Based on what I've heard, I think Sharon probably came up with maybe the situation, the perfect storm that could have happened. And that is, we got a hold of some information that was used that probably really wasn't sanctioned or had not gotten everybody's approval to be able to use, and it appears that that's probably the case. The thing that is curious to me, and I want to be sure I understand, is that I think everyone that spoke has talked about 3C, 3D. The only evidence of people that weren't on the list seem to have been in that particular area. So, Beth, you have some others, and Adrian, you have some others that were also included. I'm just asking for,
Yeah.
You had other names.
Yeah, it's all over. It's not just 3 or 3D.
Okay, so those that were brought to us pretty well centralized around that particular area, and I don't want to be misled by that, but my thinking is that maybe we got a couple of locations that we really need to do some research on and try to find out, do we have the best connectivity that we can get at those particular voting sites. So that's something that I would, investigate there. But we don't know the true magnitude of it.
Well, quantify that.
Like, is it 30? Is it 50? Is it 2? Is it 100?
Names to
Yeah. Names that were
It's right around, it's right around the difference between what I reported on election night, meaning, again, just to reiterate,
Yeah,
that's a hard vote off an encrypted thumb drive.
correct.
16186, we're at 15 and some change right now, so we're about 500 names that I should be able to say, yep, Dennis voted on election day at East City Hall. Now again, this is what we're trying to figure out in our own system, because every name that was sent to me yesterday and Monday, I got it. So I don't know if this is a statistical anomaly. I don't, again, this is what we're spending our time in, and trust me, plenty of it to figure it out.
Yeah.
And I know you, and I know your efforts, and you're not gonna stop until you get those numbers to match, period. And I think everybody in here has spoken to that, integrity, of yourself and your office. Going back to where I think we might have had some documents that left early, that could have very well been,
Also,
you know, some confusion there, and, I know that we'll take care of that, going forward. But, you gotta come back and tell us when that count finalized.
These two numbers, 2004 is the 50 Democrat, and add in the 12,663.
Signature.
and if I can, I'll tell you why
Yeah.
we can't, because that's gonna be the more important piece.
That's a must.
Yes,
Sorry,
Environmental.
obviously.
agreed.
I mean, those
2463.
there's no inaccuracy in any of that, because you didn't touch
12,663.
anything. You had nothing to do with any of that.
That's today.
But
Then this
it's
is
not showing
that's
up
the list
on
that I got from Sharon.
reports
Now,
that that's a
14,000.
problem that they have and that they must fix.
Yeah, and this is what's in the 16,000 is Rockwall
And
list.
so, you know, I think we've gotten a good, I think we've gotten.
Is that significant or not? And I look at the number of March 1st, the day that I voted, my
When
name is still
is
on there.
your, drop dead date for canvassing the votes?
The chairs have to do it.
The
no
chairs
later
have
than-
already done it.
No, they haven't. So what I gave them this morning was the initial results from BRM, that hard vote printout copy. And then I owe them an additional, I give them that, and then I give them an additional document with a seal on it that just says, here are the votes that were counted after 1 March, and you're talking about ballot by mails, provisionals, and anything, like Ms. Howell's daughter. Something that was postmarked by the right date, but it doesn't arrive in my office until 3 March and gets counted subsequently. And then they take that, and then they will go into the Secretary of State's website and enter results and canvass the election for their party. They've got until close of business tomorrow, I think, to do that.
Tomorrow
Yeah.
is the date you have to have. And I have, confidence in both parties, in their leadership to come to an agreement as to, you know, the number of actual votes and.
And again, that number that is a hard number.
That number's not gonna.
It's that transaction that any of you have queried me for in the past when you were on the ballot and said, hey, give me that list of registered voters for precinct 3. if we don't get it right between what we're doing and in concert with our vendor, you may not see my name for voting in the March, Republican primary. That's when it becomes, it's an issue for the voter, and obviously it's an issue, and we gotta solve it, period. But no bearing on results. I just wanna make sure everybody understands that. We're talking about two different things. I know that what I read into that computer that night from that encrypted thumb drive, that's a real number from a real vote and represents a real ballot in a box secured in my warehouse right now, on camera.
So we've had no one come in and say, I checked in, but I never got a ballot to go vote.
No, right, no.
Is your number here in the computer the same as the Secretary of State? On that 16-186?
Yeah, because that's what I reported election night. I had to manually key in each race, how many votes the candidate got for ballot by mail, early voting, and that's what allows them to.
When will you finalize the 400 or 500 discrepancies?
Send it to them.
I wish I could give you a hard date, but give me till the end of the week, and I will come back to y'all and at least give you the way ahead or a couple of different courses of action.
Are we thinking this is more of a software, because it's not connecting, things like that? Could be.
Initially, that's my sense. I think we gotta do some more work, so that we can see ourselves and we know exactly where, because, and what I've said to my vendor, and I've been real clear, I was like, hey man, if I screwed something up, tell me. And we will unscrew that quickly, but I don't believe this is a self-inflicted wound. So we just gotta figure out what's what.
And that's decided.
Yes, sir. I mean, we have 16,000 people voting. If we're talking about 500 people, that's a number. That's 5%. A little less than 5%, but it's still a number.
And I'm not trying to be disrespectful to people that wanna ask questions and have their hand up, whatever. There'll be plenty of time to be able to address Chris or myself or someone else, about a second thought that you may have, or something that you feel like could contribute to this particular issue.
I feel like everybody has my cell number, and if you don't, I don't know why you don't. It's on my website. So. Yeah.
So, and thank you for taking those calls, and we know that you'll continue to do that, until we get to the end.
Yes, sir.
That's the confidence that I have in you, sir.
Thank you.
Not unless we get into some voting or canvassing or whatever.
Let's do this right, what we'll do.
Mr. Hinkle, you have any comments you want to make at this point? Mr. Severe, anything else at this time? Mr. Gilmore, all right. Want to take a 10-minute recess, everybody? Second.